most men have the understanding that, you know, there's a difference between finding someone sexually attractive and actually raping them. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. Before we jump in, I really wanted to say thank you guys for supporting this True Tea, this new rebirth of it. I really appreciate your guys' support. It does mean so much to me. I've been trying to be a little bit more authentic and real with you guys, and I really appreciate that a lot of you guys have, you know, been receptive to my stories, and we're gonna be telling another really rough story in this video. And I just wanted to say that, you know, some of these stories that I'm telling, they are hard for me to tell, but I'm telling them because I think that, you know, they're helpful, they're productive, and, you know, I know that there's a lot of people out there who want to hear that they've gone through the same thing. And, you know, I really wanted to appreciate you guys for sharing your guys' stories and, you know, showing solidarity with me and stuff. That really does mean a lot. So yeah, thank you guys so much. If you guys aren't already subscribed to this channel, you should be. We upload videos every Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time, and I'm trying to make True Tea a regular thing. Let me know in the comment box if I made True Tea a regular thing, what would be a good day for me to do it. I don't know. It used to be weekly. I'm still playing with stuff on this channel, so let me know what you guys think. Your opinions always really matter to me. So we are going to be talking about another really rough topic. It's going to be about sexual violence. So much like last time, I highly suggest that you go to your kitchen, get yourself a glass of tea before we have this conversation. Personally, I am drinking some just regular green tea from Lipton. It's not fancy. Funny story, I made a big jug of it, and I, for some reason, put it at the bottom of my fridge. And before I, you know, poured it into this glass, I literally spilled the tea all over my floor. So there's just some tea marinating in my kitchen, but I wanted to record this video, so here we go. So anyway. Wow. Okay. So we're going to be having a conversation about something kind of rough in this video. We're going to be talking once again about sexual violence, and we're specifically going to be discussing whether or not what a woman wears validates the sexual violence that happens to her. This conversation is kind of very specifically inspired by a tweet that I saw by Stephanie Hamill, who is just, you know, some, you know, Tammy Loren clone, I guess. I don't really know her. I've never heard of her before. But she made a tweet that was something along the lines of, you know, in the era of Me Too, is this how we're uplifting women? And it was specifically in response to CardiB's new video that she did with City Girls called Twerk, that features a bunch of, you know, scantily clad women on a beach twerking. Pretty straightforward concept. And, you know, I wanted to sort of talk about that, and I wanted to share a story with you guys because I've personally gone through a lot of questions about whether or not what I was wearing validated the sexual violence that happened to me. So let's jump into the story. Once again, grab your teacups. This is gonna be a not so fun story, but it's one that sets kind of the foundation for a lot of what I'm going to say. So as a lot of you guys know, I am a transgender woman, and when I went away to college, it was really a time for me to reinvent myself. It was a time for me to sort of, you know, ask myself who I am without, you know, relying on, you know, being defined through my family or my friends at home, right? And my first year roommate was this really cool guy, had a lot of friends, and he always had these people that were coming in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, right? And they would always leave stuff. And I have a bit of a confession. Back when I was at the early stages of my transition, I definitely was a bit of a scavenger. Like if people left stuff around the school, which they often did, and it was left there, I would take it, you know? And there was a girl who came in, I never figured out who this was, but she left like a gray tank top that had, it was a Forever 21 tank top that had like a neon star on it. It was very like 2000s style. And I kept it, you know, and back then I didn't have a lot of feminine clothing. And, you know, back then for where I was, you know, expressing myself in a more feminine way was so new and so taboo, you know. Growing up, I definitely felt like any way in which I expressed myself in a feminine way was very radical, was very almost scary, was almost too much, you know. And so having this tank top, it felt very risque. It felt very taboo, but it was nice for me to wear because I was wearing something that I felt reflected me at the time, right? So like a lot of, young trans people, you want to be part of a community, right? And like a lot of LGBTQIA plus people, I somehow thought that I would be able to find this community in the bar and club scene. Now, growing up, there was this party in LA called Tiger Heat that I always wanted to go to, but none of my friends ever wanted to, and it was so far away. But, that sort of started the bug within me of like, I want to go to the club. I want to meet people like me. I want to be around people like me, right? But, by the time I went away to college, I had been a completely different person, and I wanted to be more connected with the trans community. Now, around this time, I was 18 years old, so I wasn't quite, I wasn't able to get into the clubs. Tiger Heat was an 18 plus sort of thing, but there wasn't a lot of stuff like that out in the valley where I was going to school. But there was this one transgender bar, and this was a bar where a lot of people went, a lot of people that I was familiar with through, just kind of stalking people online. They went to this bar, and I really wanted to go in, and I started adding people and kind of figuring out if there was a way for me to sneak in, but obviously that was not going to work out. But I did hear about these parties that happened after the bar. Now, mind you, I'm 18 years old. I'm from a very conservative area. I don't know what happens at after parties after a bar. I have no concept, no clue. All I knew was that I was going to be around a lot of trans people, and I was going to be around a lot of people who were into trans people, right? And that's what I wanted to do. So I managed to get connected with this guy, right? And he told me that he was willing to take me to a party, an after party, and I was pretty excited about that. So I took my brand new, gray tank top and some gray skinny jeans. Back then, skinny jeans were, to me, they were the most risque thing in the world too. And I went to this party. I felt really cute and whatever. And again, this was when I was 18. I was pretty young, right? In my mind, I'm expecting to walk into like this sort of like after party, people socializing, people, having a good time. I didn't really know what to expect, right? The guy comes and picks me up. We go to the party, and we walk into the party. And, when you first walk in, it kind of was that way, where there were people drinking and there were people socializing, but it was clear that the real party was upstairs, right? And when I went upstairs, it was basically a sex party, right? I had no, again, I was really young and very naive. I was not expecting that, right? But, unfortunately, like I kind of talked to you guys in my last video that, I got into a lot of stuff when I was younger. And so it was pretty common for me to be in like a weird situation, not like this, but it was weird. It was common for me to be in like a situation that a lot of people would see as scary, and then like try to make the best of it, And so even though I was at this sex party, I was like, I'm going to go downstairs and socialize, because I definitely wasn't interested in doing any of the sex stuff, right? The guy who brought me to the party, he ended up having some intense family issue, and he ended up having to leave me there. Now, looking back at this story, that was not okay. But he ended up having to go, he had to leave me, he had to go do something else. And so, he left me at this party, right? And back then, I had been in enough situations with men where I felt that, I'm gonna be able to find a guy here who can, take me home. Again, there's a lot of the ways that I used to think that they're all inspired by all the stuff I went through when I was much younger. And I'll probably tell you guys more stories about how I got there. But let's just say that I was very used to getting what I wanted from men. Let's just leave it there. So I was very sure that I was going to be able to find someone who was going to be able to take me home, right? So like I said, I'm not here to have sex at this party. So I decide that I'm going to, again, socialize, and eventually, because it's after 2 in the morning, people leave, and, I don't have a way of getting home. So I talked to the owner of the house, and he says, I'll take you home in the morning, right? And so I was like, all right, so I'll sleep on the couch, right? And so, I'm sorry, sometimes when I talk about this stuff, it's really hard for me because I never know where my emotions are going to go. I've had a lot of conversations about, and I've told this story before, but I never really know where the wave of my emotions are going to go. So, I'm sleeping on the couch and I'm awakened. And I wake up. I was laying like on the front, you know, with my butt up, right? And I wake up to this man putting himself inside me. And sorry. I remember, I'll never forget exactly how I felt in that moment. It was almost like I had like floated above my body, and I was like looking at what was happening, and I saw it happening, but I couldn't do anything, you know. He turned me around and he reinserted himself, and I had my hands up trying to, you know, like I was starting to push him off of me, but I just couldn't find the strength. And I think if you've been through this situation, you understand the exact sort of moment I'm feeling. I was complying, but I wasn't okay. You know, I couldn't find the strength to actually push him off. And you know, a lot of people, you think that when stuff like this happens to you, you're going to turn into Xena, the warrior princess. You're going to just kick his ass. You're going to do this stuff. And it's not like I'm necessarily a weak person, but I just couldn't muster the strength to push this man off of me, right? And so he's doing what he's doing, and he's whispering all these like disgusting things into my ear. And it was weird because I started to cry, and I noticed that it was almost like he had this realization in his mind that what he was doing wasn't okay. You know, it should have been really obvious that if someone's sleeping on a couch and they are alone, that they don't want you to jump on top of them. But for some reason, I think he had a realization that I didn't want this, and this wasn't okay. And so he pretty quickly got up, put his clothes on, and left. And as he got up, I saw the owner of the house sort of sitting in a chair, watching it as it was going on, clearly enjoying what he was seeing. And so I never really figured out like what that all was, what that whole situation was. And I had a really hard time processing it, and I just ended up falling back to sleep. The owner did end up taking me home in the morning. It was a very quiet car ride. And, you know, unfortunately, he was not a person who from that point forward was out of my life. That was someone who I had more experiences with, which maybe one day I'll tell you guys about. But, you know, again, I had a hard time understanding really what had happened, you know. And it was weird because wearing that tank top and those skinny jeans, again, even though it's tank tops and a skinny jean, for me, it felt like it was so risque. You know, I felt like I was being slutty. You know, I felt like I was sort of there, right? It didn't help that when I told two of my friends sort of what happened. I basically told them, you know, I went to a party, it ended up being a sex party, and this guy got on top of me. And their reaction to it, I think because their understanding of what trans women do was very shallow, was basically like, well, what did you expect? You know? And they were the only people I had told about it at that time. And like, I told them, and that reaction was enough to encourage me not to ever talk about it ever again. And I didn't talk about it until I was, you know, about a year later on YouTube. I made a very tearful video about it. And I got the worst comments ever, and, you know, you deserve it, who would rape you, this and this and that, you know, it was really hard. Which, side note, you know, I'm able to share these stories because I've had a lot of experience. I mean, this was hard, obviously, but like, I've shared them enough to where I can share them and be open about it, and it doesn't really affect me in the way it used to. I've tried to tell this story a lot of times on camera, even as you know, recently as a couple of months ago, and not been able to hold my tears in. But yeah, for a while, I really blamed what I was wearing on why that happened, you know. And it's funny because I now understand that a tank top and a pair of gray pants, that's pretty conservative, you know. I hate this idea that how you dress and how you present yourself validates, you know, what a man could do to you, you know, like the sort of victim blaming, slut shaming stuff that I keep seeing in my feed, you know, connected to R. Kelly, connected to the CardiB video, connected to a lot of stuff. It boggles my mind because, you know, like you know, scrolling through that Stephanie Hamill thread, I read this one comment that was like, you know, men are biologically wired to project their seed, and women are biologically wired to, you know, protect the seed and find an alpha male. You know, all this like silly, like biological determinist crap about, you know, how women are and how men are, and this is just how things are. And, you know, I always hate that stuff because I think that ultimately in a lot of ways it treats men as though they are just so incapable of controlling their urges, you know. Like, listen, look what I'm wearing right now. I'm on my way to a goth club. Like, right, you can't see how short my skirt is, but my skirt is short and my ass is out. You know, I'm wearing this bralette. I know that there's gonna be men who look at me, find me attractive, and will probably get a little bit of a chub looking at it. You know, I get that. I'm very, very aware of that. But you know what? Most men have the understanding that, you know, there's a difference between finding someone sexually attractive and actually raping them. It's aggravating to me to even listen to some of these conversations, you know, these men who are like, well, you know, if you dress like that, if you present yourself, if you were just more modest, you know, this wouldn't happen to you. Because I know that I know that I'm not alone in this, but there's so many times where like I go outside and I'm like in my most no effort at all, you know, braless, hairs all over the place, just, and, you know, in sweatpants, whatever. And that's when men are, ooh, baby, ooh, sweetie, oh, this, oh, that, da, 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 da. You know, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, right? It doesn't matter what you're wearing. You know, a lot of people can say, you know, she was dressing like this and that's why that happened to her and that's the excuse. But again, you know, okay, you found someone sexually attractive, right? You found someone, you know, it takes your actions to actually get up and insert yourself inside someone. You know, that was a decision that you made. That was an actual decision that you made that you could have walked back, but you decided not to. You know, there's nothing stopping you from, you know, not being a rapist. Like, I do not like this. I don't like this stuff where you act like it's the clothes, because I can't help it. Like when I listen to these conversations, feel like it's just, the clothes are just the excuse. You know, the clothes are just the excuse. And if it's not that, it could be something else. You know, she was talking to me, she was smiling at me, she sent me mixed messages. It's always something. You know, I've learned that it really doesn't matter what you wear. I've been very open like this, and I've been incredibly conservative, and men have largely treated me the same. Men have largely treated me the same. The only difference is that they react differently when there's a man around me. When I'm with a man, so then they'll, you know, they'll respect him. They'll respect his autonomy. Like when I used to go out with my ex, even now when I go out with my partners, it's like, you see people, when I'm with a man, it's like super, super respectful, right? But when I'm out on my own, it's like, oh, you know, baby sweetie, this and this and that, you know. There's, it's frustrating because, you know, I do believe that there is somewhat of a conversation to be had about where's the line between exploitation and empowerment. I do think that that's a conversation that we can have, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. Because do I feel particularly empowered by the twerk video or twerk videos in general? I personally don't. I don't feel like it's necessarily exploitative, but I don't feel empowered by it. Like that's, you know, I don't think that that's female empowerment, but it can be for some other women, you know, like for me personally, my feminism is really related to allowing women to have a full breadth of access to different types of ways of being, you know. That means if you want to be super conservative, you can be super conservative. If you want to be twerking in a video, you can be twerking in a video. I want to get away from this idea of we need to control women's bodies so that men behave, right? That is some shit that gets to me so much because it's not a reflection of reality. And when we talk about things like patriarchy, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about this idea that we need to control women's choices. We need to control women's autonomy, you know, also that we can protect this idealized, you know, society that doesn't exist. You know, I'm pretty positive that in the 50s when people had, you know, these very, you know, typical, you know, standard gender roles, that rape was still a thing, you know, that sexual assault was still a thing. We just didn't talk about it as much, which is another thing, Sometimes when I read comments like Stephanie's that are very antagonistic to the Metoo movement, it feels like people who are, you know, just, you know, tired of women specifically not just putting up with it. You know, of course people will say, well, you know, we don't agree with rape. We don't support rape. We don't want rape to happen, you know, and we don't agree with it. But what they're really upset about is the fact that you're talking about it so much, because historically women have just kind of shut up and not said anything. You know, they've had to sort of swallow it. This is just part of how things are. This is the curse of my gender. This is just how it is. But now women are speaking up and saying, hey, this happened to me and it wasn't okay. And that's when a lot of people start to have an issue with it. And I think that that's very, very telling. You know, for me personally, I'm about to go out like this, ass out, titties out. And if a man decides that he wants to do shit to me, if a man decides that he wants to do something to me, if he decides that he wants to assault me, that's not my fault, okay? That is not my fault. I wasn't asking for it because of what I was wearing. I'm wearing this because I think it looks cute. And I'm right. You know, I'm dressing how I want to dress, and and that doesn't validate the sexual violence that's visited upon me. You know, this idea that, you know, if you dress more modestly, it just isn't going to happen to you. Look, again, I've been very conservative pinup girl and very, you know, boop boopy doo, you know, covering myself, most of my body, and it's the same. It's the same. And I think that most women, if they're being honest, will acknowledge that. You know, maybe men will treat you differently when you present yourself in a more, you know, in a more respectable way, but misogyny doesn't stop happening to you because of how you present yourself. It's just repackaged in a different way. You know, it's just made to be more palatable based on how they think they can get to you. You know, so anyway, that's what I have to say in this video. You know, this is one of those conversations that really aggravates me because, again, it's something I've personally had to go through. To think that I spent a really long time blaming that tank top and those skinny jeans for what happened to me is bizarre, because it wasn't the skinny jeans. It wasn't the tank top. It was the fact that we live in a society where men often feel super, super entitled to the bodies of women, right? Where it doesn't matter whether or not I agree. It doesn't matter whether or not I like it. I was there. I was existing, and that's why I deserved it, right? Again, the clothes are just the excuse. So anyway, I know this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I know there are a lot of people who have differing opinions on this, but I would really like to know what yours is. So let me know what your true tea is in the comment box below. I would really, really love to hear it. And again, if you guys are not subscribed to this channel, you should be. We upload videos here every Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. So I hope you guys will come and enjoy, you know, the process of learning, sharing, and growing. I am open to being wrong. So if you think that the things I've said in this video are wrong, feel free to drag me. Anyway, I gotta go dance. I'm gonna go. Talk to you guys later. Bye.